Well, it's October 3rd or 4th. I'm not actually sure. Probably the 3rd. Okay. And I'm back from Bergamo. I did a presentation there on plant communities and relationships of plant communities. So it's good to be back and jumped right into a planting job we have here in Lake Geneva. We're doing a meadow, more of a composed meadow. So I thought I'd run through some of the patterns we're using. Right now, if you look behind me, it looks very shady, but the sun's actually going into winter, I think, solstice. So the days are getting shorter. So the majority of the year, from early June, it's a full sun area. And we also have woodland edge plants. So we're doing the areas that are woodland edge with plants that transition from sun to shade. So what we're doing now, we're drilling in, we mulched everything, we killed the turf. We're planting through the dead sod. Gina's got the electric drill, and we're drilling the holes. I'm laying out the patterns first. So I could tell you a few of the patterns that I've got. I've got Stakes Umelo going into the shade with Aster divaricatus. We've got Allium Summer Beauty, Stakes Umelo, Aster divaricatus in more sun, because it does well in a sunnier area also. It's a good transitional plant. And then we got Limonium scattered through here in larger pockets. I'm planting in groups of 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I'm doing a bigger block planting, because the grass that will be here is going to be Deschampsia goldtau. As you can see, the area slopes down to a dry creek that's here. So this area stays fairly moist. So, and it does have an irrigation system too. So between irrigation and the moisture that's here, I think the Deschampsia will make a nice cloud-like ground cover when it blooms, and a very stiff dark green foliage. And then the Deschampsia is going to blend into Sporobolus heterolepis. So we'll mix the Deschampsia and space it apart. And then in between the Deschampsia, we're going to be putting Liatris spicata as a vertical element coming through the large groups of Deschampsia. So we'll have a lot of Liatris mixed in with the Deschampsia. So that's going to be this corner. And as we move down the woodland edge, it transitions with Galenia trifoliata, Scutellaria and Cana. And again, those are in more blocks. And I mentioned in a show I've done earlier, I'm putting the block plantings in the back and drifting them through there, because the people that live here, most of the people that live here, they easily identify with block plantings. So if I get too mingled or too complex, actually, it's hard to identify that as something beautiful right away. It looks too mixed up. So as we garden, year after year, as this planting matures, we'll mix the edges together. We'll start mingling more. But this way, we've kind of won the client over. They see the block, something they're familiar with and used to. And that's part of gardening too. It's just not doing what I want all the time. So I can do things and drive it in a healthy direction. And a lot of times we'll garden in that direction too through time. And that was one of the discussions we had at the conference, how to win over a vast majority of people to new styles of planting for them. So we can walk around and take a look at some of the other patterns. So thanks. Well, we're using 2.5-inch containers, you can see, about 3 inches deep. And basically, call a plug in the tray, a perennial plug. And the cool thing is we grew all these ourselves too. We produced 65,000 plants at Northwind. So it's really exciting for me to have somewhat control over my own products. So I'm not trying to buy in and find things all the time. And then some plants are hard to find, or some plants aren't ready for a few months or till next year even. And the reason we're using this is economy. We can put this in the ground at a much more economical rate than the 1-gallon containers. And this time of year they'll grow very slightly, they'll root in very slightly. We've got leaf mulch here to inhibit frost heaving. Some of the plants will heave a little bit, we'll push them back in the ground in late February, early March. We'll walk through here. And then the other advantage is when spring starts, two things will happen. The weed population will get active and we come out with the Dutch hose. But because we haven't rototilled, we're not going to have that much weed competition. And the plants will take off like gangbusters as soon as the ground warms up. And at that same time, you'll notice the gaps and holes. We're not planting any warm season grasses here. I've had an experience by putting Sporobolus and Schizachyrium in at this time of year. they heave out of the ground. They don't root in at all because they've been vegetative and they're going dormant. And when they heave out of the ground, they're exposed to the winter conditions, and it sets the little plugs back, and we almost lose 30 to 40%, and the ones that do live are much weaker. So we're going to plant the warm season grasses next May. And because it's warm weather, they'll root in as quickly and catch up to all the other plants we put in this time of year. So it's kind of a two-phase project, but everything will grow uniformly together. By mid-July, you won't know the grasses were put in the following spring. So here's one of the plants that I like to use quite a bit, but in small numbers. And it's not used that much. It's a native coreopsis called Coreopsis palmata. I wish I could tell you the common name. I have no idea what the common name is. If I sat here for an hour, I could think of it. But Coreopsis palmata, it's a rhizomatous, short rhizomatous coreopsis. Has a beautiful golden yellow flower in mid-June, but I really love the seed heads. The seed heads are like green little teacups. Beautiful seed heads. So even when it's not in bloom, July and August, it gets about 30 inches tall, covered in these beautiful green seed heads. They look like the tip of your little finger, just clusters of them above the plant. And it's very durable. The foliage is very tough, really rich green. And I don't use a lot, like I mentioned. I'll put 2 here, and I've scattered them through the pattern, mixing them with Echinacea pallida, Echinacea purpurea. I'm using Prairie Splendor. It'll be a little shorter than pallida, so you have the pallida floating above the Echinacea purpurea, and it's just more a design thing. And for me, it's also see what happens. And I've got islands of Amsonia northwind, Galenia trifoliata, Agastache albiflora, it's Agastache rugosa albiflora, and Calamagrostis Carl Forster. So I've got this island in 5 to 6 places drifting through the garden. For the last year, I've been trying these island plantings. I did one in Virginia using Veronicastrum and Orangium yucifolium and panicums, and it needs some fine tuning, but it's just a mood I'm in for this year, doing these little moments of taller islands between the sweeps of grasses and lower plants. And then one addition is Gigantea. I'm trying to think of the name. I just threw it in there. Cephalaria. I'm sorry. Cephalaria gigantea. I'm putting 2 over there, 2 over there, 2 over there. It's very tall and has little scabiosa yellow flowers. So it's kind of a, what is that over there like? I've never seen anything like that before. So it's just little playful moments you have. I thought we'd walk through the woodland edge planting. You see we're transitioning into Eupatorium rugosum. It's a white snakeroot, which is dominant through the woods. And there's Eupatorium purpureum, which is, but this is basically 2 woodland oak savanna plants, but they're very dominant through this woodland area. So in front of that, where the garden is beginning, I've got a group of Calamagrostis Carl Forster. That'll be very vertical, early and upright. Got Amsonia northwind. It's a larger Amsonia with very narrow foliage. It actually gets around 40 inches high. And a beautiful woodland edge plant is Scutellaria incana with blue flowers. Gets around 36, 40 inches high. And it also has a rhizomatous growth habit, so it'll be very dense and strong. And this is the Agastache rugosa albiflora. Then I have Galenia trifoliata there, Galenia here. And moving out through the center in front of the blue Scutellaria is Rudbeckia fulgida ambrosia, which is a very attractive Rudbeckia, a little more upright than the fulgida species we have here in the Midwest, or in Illinois, Wisconsin. And it has beautiful smaller flowers. So I'd recommend trying that too if you can get it. Rudbeckia fulgida ambrosia. And then I go to Aster divaricatus, and then we drift out into where we have more sun, into the Sproulus meadow in this area, transitioning to the Deschampsia in the lower corner. For the show today, and it was good being with all of you. So I'm very excited about the project. There's about 2,000 2.5-inch pots that were planted. We won't finish today, like I mentioned. We'll put the Sproulus in next spring. And then we're also going to be doing the garden care, the stewardship next year, because it's very important. It's very hard to hand these projects off to even landscapers, because a lot of the landscapers don't know the plants. So they really don't know what a weed and what a plant is. And with that lack of knowledge, the garden becomes very difficult for them to care for. And in a way, it's not freely admitted. They will take it on. But when you come back in time, I've revisited some of the gardens I put in, and a lot of the plants aren't around, or they've been overtaken by some of the echinaceas that are seeded and left in without realizing that they can be hoed out actually. So we'll be doing the stewardship. We'll be using our Dutch push pull hoe. We'll be on our time frame of about 1,000 square feet every 75 minutes. So we've given them a cost roughly. Even before we put it in, they kind of know the hours needed next year to take care of it, about 17 to 22 hours per 1,000 square feet. And in the following years, it might go down to 16 to 15 hours per 1,000 square feet as the plants get denser from mid-June on. And we talked about that before. But guess what? If you're listening to my show, I'm going to keep repeating that over and over again, because design is very important, but what's much, much more important is who you're handing the garden off to. It's the gardening skills and abilities and understanding the relationships the plants are going into from youth to maturity. And that's what we all have to get better at and move forward with that strength of gardening. Thanks, everybody.